Hi Deepak, we have been waiting for the budget that came out today. What are your views on the whole thing? Let's start with tax benefits. Can you throw some light on benefits proposed?
Yes, Akanksha, we've got an interesting interim budget. We usually didn't expect anything much from it. There are some tax limit hikes or changes, very minor. There's a 50,000 rupee standard deduction up from 40,000 rupees. That's going to be applicable to anybody who's salaried. There's also a rebate. It's a very strange one that says basically if you earn less than 5 lakh rupees after all of your deductions and all of that stuff, if the net taxable income is less than 5 lakhs or less, you're going to have to pay no tax, because any tax that was applicable gets cancelled in a rebate. This is applicable from April 1st 2019 income made in that year. When you file it, it will be in July 2020. So essentially you don't have to pay any tax if you make 5 lakh rupees of net taxable income. This also means really that if you consider that there's an 80C deduction of housing loan principal or insurance policies or ELSS mutual funds of 1,50,000 rupees, another 50,000 rupees deduction for an NPS investment, 50,000 standard deduction, you might actually say that a salaried person up to 7.5 lakhs will actually not have to pay any tax. Only beyond that he does. But it also means that if you make about say 5,50,000 rupees, you will still pay the first slab, that is the 12,500 rupees for the first slab. And then for the second slab, which is above 5 lakhs, you will pay about 50,000 into about 20%, so about 10,000 rupees more. So if you make 5,50,000, you will pay a slightly larger amount of tax than if you did pay only if you got only 5 lakh rupees. So that's a bit of a disconcerting thing for a lot of people who earn a lot more, but it does benefit a large amount of taxpayers who will still have to file their taxes, but they will get this rebate starting next financial year. There's also some smaller, tax reductions or deductions that continue to apply. The slabs are exactly the same. There is a bit of talk about housing, and I probably will come to that. And there's been no other tweaks for corporate taxes or GST. We'll have to wait for the real budget for that.
Like you touched, the budget seems to favor housing. What's the story there?
So the housing thing is, strange to come in an interim budget, but essentially if you, for instance, had capital gains of up to 2 crore rupees selling a house, then you could earlier have only invested in another one house in order to cancel out that capital gain and not pay capital gains tax. Now they're saying, listen, you can take that gain and invest it in 2 houses instead to offset the capital gain. So that means that a person can buy a primary house and a secondary house. Other thing about secondary houses, if you have a second house and you're living in it, or your parents or your children are living in it, you were earlier taxed, or right now you are taxed on notional rent income of that house. From next year you will not be, because 2 houses you can have as self-occupied without any notional gains based tax, now notional rent based tax. This also means that you could technically buy a second house and not give it out on rent and still not have to pay this tax. So it encourages people to buy another house. It also has the budget as a clause for builders who have unsold inventory and they've completed the project. Now they were given a leeway of 1 year, after which they would have had to pay tax on notional rent. The idea was to force them to sell. Now because they have not been able to sell, they have been given an extension of another 1 more year, so they can complete the project. 2 years after that is when they will have to start paying tax on notional rent if they have unsold inventory. There's also Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is the low income housing incentives that were given to developers, which would have expired on 31st March 2019. That will go to 2020. So that gives them another year to start a project. Now, all of this essentially gives us the feeling, at least, that the government wants to encourage housing. There's a lot of distress perhaps in housing, but it seems to mean that most of this will be urban and slightly higher end housing. We are talking larger numbers here. So that's where a lot of the distress is, and that's what the government is trying to encourage.
What about all the government spending? Where will they spend?
There's a bunch of spending that they're doing. One of the big things that they're doing right now is, they're doing this PM Kisan Yojana, which is a form of income to low landed farmers. So that means if you have less than 2 hectares of land and you're a farmer, you will get 6,000 rupees a year in 3 installments, 2,000 per installment, free as an income from the government. So this will be transferred directly to your bank account and will cost the government about 75,000 crores. Now that's, you might think, is a lot, but let me come to where the government is really spending. 6.6 lakh crores, the biggest single ticket item in the budget, is on interest payments on all the bonds that they've used to borrow. There's about 3 lakh crores in subsidies and about 3 lakh crores for defense. These are 2 larger ticket items. There is a bunch of expenditures that go on agriculture. Now agriculture has gone from 86,000 crores to 1,40,000 crores, fairly large amount of spending as well. And we've seen slightly small increases in education, about 5 or 10%, small increase in others. So we're going to totally spend about 27 lakh crores in this financial year, in the next coming financial year, out of which the government is largely, half of it is going to be subsidies, defense and interest payments. For at least about 40% of it is that much. And we're going to see a bunch more in smaller and for instance, each department needs some spending. There's something called transport. We haven't gone through that in detail, but that's also getting a substantial amount, nearly 2 lakh crores plus. So there is a substantially higher amount of spending this year, and we're hoping that they'll make it through revenue.
So then, do they earn more money from taxpayers?
Well, actually they do in a way. They grow about 7,60,000 crores, they say, from corporate taxes. Good double digit, more than 13% increase in corporate taxes. In personal taxes, they want to increase it by 17%, about 6.2 lakh crores. That's about 13 lakh crores right away. Now we're going to earn in revenue about 20 lakh crores, out of which 17 comes from taxes. 6 lakh crores is expected from goods and services tax, GST. Now 6 lakh crores sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, it's 50,000 crores or 70,000 crores per month, really. So it's not a substantially higher amount than expected, and we are actually earning that much right now. Out of the 17 odd lakh crores that they want to earn, apart from this, there's going to be about 80,000 crores they're going to get, they say, from dividends from the RBI. Now that was 50,000 crores till last year, so I think the changes in perception of how much RBI needs to hold in reserves versus give to the government as dividend is edging towards the government wants a higher dividend. So they want 30,000 crores more, 60% higher dividend, and want to collect 80,000 crores from the RBI, a little more from the other public service enterprises. They're also going to target a disinvestment of about 90,000 crores. So you'll see a lot more buybacks, we imagine, some offers for sale, and perhaps we don't know what's going to happen, some strategic disinvestment. However, most of this will change when the final budget comes in. I feel that if you earn 20 lakh crores and you spend 27 lakh crores, the budget deficit is about 7 lakh crores. Now that, they say, is about 3.4% of GDP. That means our GDP will cross 200 lakh crores. That's about 200 trillion rupees, nearly or close to nearly $3 trillion. This is a fairly large number, but that indicates us growing at about 12 to 13%. That's not out of the ordinary, because the basic growth is about 7, real growth is about 7%, inflation is about 4.5%. So we're talking 11.5% to 12% nominal growth. That's more or less expected. 3.5% of that, 7 lakh crores, is going to be funded by issue of bonds. So we're going to issue 7,10,000 crores of bonds this year. That's why the bond market's a little unhappy. They're looking at it as a higher number than they expected. That's going to be, of course, that's going to be accompanied by repayments as well. So there's about 4,50,000 or 4,60,000 crores of net bond issuances this year. But however, it's still a fairly large number, and we feel at this point that's the reason why the markets or the bond markets are a little unhappy. However, having said that, it's a much smaller number than we earlier expected. We thought 2 lakh crores for farmers. It's only 75,000. We thought there'll be a bunch more subsidies, but there's not. So in that context, we're slightly better off than we thought we would be.
So what are your own views on the budget as a whole?
So the overall structure is that this is interim and we get another budget in July. I hope at that time we don't see any massive taxation changes, but it's likely that the real tax changes will come only at that time, if any. There will also be a new government, so it may have different ambitions, but this government is purely out there trying to save farmer distress. Obviously doing some kind of populism to win votes. I believe they've been impressed by what Telangana did. They provided 8,000 crore rupees per farmer, and that won them Telangana back. So they're thinking 6,000 rupees per farmer this time might. So there is a bit of populism involved. There is also a significant change towards the road sector, towards infrastructure, towards building, but they can't obviously allocate a tremendous amount of money right now. They have to wait till the final budget if they come back to power. So we feel that the budget overall provides a decent picture. It's not the end of the story. We'll have a new picture in July. So from now to July, it seems like a good budget. The bond yields and banks are going to be a little unhappy because of their ownership of bonds, but I believe that will kind of be clarified over the next few days. Overall, it's an interesting budget. It's nice to see that we've not gone down the route of extreme populism, but it's also disappointing to see that we've moved away from not having large tax or subsidy announcements in an interim budget. On the whole, I'm very neutral on it. I feel we'll get the real picture only in July.